Continuing coverage now, Taylor Parker becomes the 7th woman on death row in Texas. Parker is still being processed at the state prison in Gatesville before she is sent to the Mountain View unit to join 6 other women awaiting execution. She becomes the 2nd female from East Texas on death row and the youngest at 29.
It was the evening of November 9th, 2022, and inside the Texas courtroom, silence filled the air as the final verdict was read. Taylor Renee Parker, the woman accused of one of the most horrific crimes in Texas history, stood motionless as the jury foreman announced her fate. For the brutal murder of a young mother and the unborn child ripped from her womb, Parker was sentenced to death. That moment marked the beginning of a countdown she could no longer stop. Her name would soon join one of the smallest and most feared lists in America, the women condemned to die in the state of Texas. But what happened next left even the courtroom stunned. In the hours that followed, Parker spoke unexpected final words and made a last wish no one could have imagined. The final hours of Taylor Renee Parker had begun, and to understand how she reached this point, we step back to the moment where it all began. Now you all might be wondering, why would the U.S. justice system sentence a young, beautiful and innocent-looking woman to death? Because behind that calm smile was a crime so cruel, so calculated, that even seasoned investigators struggled to comprehend it. Taylor Renee Parker was sentenced to die for the brutal murder of Reagan Simmons Hancock, a pregnant mother, just 21 years old, and for the death of her unborn baby, Braxlyn Sage. A crime so twisted, it blurred the line between obsession and evil. In the months before the murder, Taylor Parker had built a world entirely out of lies. She told everyone she was pregnant, posting photos online, showing off a growing belly, even scheduling fake ultrasounds. Her boyfriend believed her. Her family believed her. Even her close friends thought she was preparing to welcome a child. But the truth was darker than anyone could imagine. Parker wasn't pregnant. She never had been, and when her due date started to approach, the walls of her fantasy began to collapse. Her boyfriend grew suspicious. Doctors' names didn't match. Hospital visits couldn't be confirmed. The story she'd spent months creating was falling apart, and Taylor Parker refused to let that happen. On the morning of October 9th, 2020, she drove toward New Boston, Texas, carrying with her a plan that could only end in blood. In her car lay a surgical blade and towels. In her mind, a single thought: if she couldn't give birth to a baby, she would take one. That morning, she pulled up outside the home of Reagan Simmons Hancock, a woman she had known for years. To Reagan, Parker was a friend, someone safe, familiar. Reagan was 8 months pregnant and only days away from giving birth. She opened the door, smiling, unaware she was letting a killer into her home. What happened next would horrify even veteran investigators. Inside that house, Parker attacked Reagan with a knife, stabbing her more than 100 times. The assault was so frenzied, so violent, that even the medical examiner later said it was beyond anything he had ever seen.
I've never seen anything like this.
Then, in one of the most disturbing acts in Texas criminal history, Parker cut open Reagan's abdomen and took the baby. She fled the scene, leaving the young mother dying on the floor of her own home. Hours later, she was stopped by a state trooper near the Oklahoma border. In the passenger seat lay the infant, still clinging to life. Parker tried to tell officers she had just given birth, spinning her final lie even as the truth sat beside her. But when investigators examined her, they found no signs of childbirth, only the remnants of a monstrous deception. By the time they reached Reagan's home, it was too late. The baby, Braxlyn Sage, had also died. The small town of New Boston would never forget that day. The crime so graphic, so heartbreaking, it shattered everyone who saw it. And when Parker finally stood trial, the courtroom was silent as prosecutors laid out every horrifying detail. The fake ultrasounds, the blood-soaked evidence, the motive driven by a desperate need for attention. The jury didn't hesitate. Within hours, they returned with the ultimate punishment: death. But what happened next, after the verdict, after the cameras, would reveal a side of Taylor Parker no one had ever seen before. Because in the hours following her sentence, she spoke final words that no one expected, and made a last wish so strange, even prison officials were stunned. The courtroom emptied slowly that evening, but Taylor Parker didn't cry. She didn't beg, didn't collapse, didn't even look toward the family she had destroyed. Instead, she stood there in quiet defiance, her face pale, her eyes fixed straight ahead, as if the sentence she'd just received meant nothing at all. Reporters later wrote that she looked almost relieved, like the waiting was finally over. But for the families of Reagan and baby Braxlin, the pain was just beginning. Outside, the mother of the victim sobbed as she told cameras, "My baby's gone. My granddaughter's gone. And that woman will never feel the pain we do." It was raw, real, and unforgettable. A cry that echoed through the courthouse halls long after the cameras turned off. Inside, Parker was escorted away in silence, her wrists cuffed, chains clinking with each step as deputies led her through the narrow corridor, down the elevator, past the holding cells, and into a van waiting to take her to a place few ever leave alive, Texas Death Row. The drive from Bowie County to the Mountain View unit in Gatesville lasted several hours. Parker sat in the back seat, shackled and silent, staring out at the endless Texas highway. Behind her, the sun was setting, orange fading into blood red, a color that matched the story she left behind. When the gates of the prison opened, officers led her inside through steel doors that sealed shut with a sound that could silence anyone's soul. There, she was processed like every condemned inmate before her. Fingerprints, medical checks, photographs, and a strip search. Her belongings were taken, her jewelry removed, and her new identity was written in black ink. TDCJ number 999626, Taylor Renee Parker. Her new home was a small cell. Concrete walls, a narrow bed, a toilet, and a slot for food trays. No visitors, no phone calls, just time. Endless, silent time. Guards described her as calm, composed, and eerily polite. No tears, no breakdowns. She followed instructions, answered questions softly, and when asked if she had any final requests, she paused, just long enough to make everyone wonder what she might say. Then she whispered something no one expected, a quiet, chilling sentence that even the officers struggled to forget. "I want to hold a baby again. Just once." It was a request that froze the room. There were no words, no responses, just the heavy sound of the door closing behind her. From that night on, Taylor Parker became one of only a handful of women in America awaiting execution, confined to a cell built for silence and reflection. But even in those first hours, her mind seemed untouched by guilt. When guards checked on her later that night, they found her sitting on the bed, whispering softly to herself, rocking slightly, as if cradling something that wasn't there. For the families of her victims, justice had finally been delivered. But for those who saw her that night, there was something even more haunting than her crime: the calm, unbroken stare of a woman who refused to accept reality. As midnight passed over Gatesville, the lights dimmed across the unit, and the last echoes of the day faded into quiet. Taylor Parker, the woman who had once lived inside a lie, now lived inside the truth. And as the years ahead stretched before her, one question lingered like a shadow in that concrete cell. Did she feel remorse for what she'd done? Or was she still living inside her own illusion? Weeks turned into months. Inside the Patrick L. O'Daniel unit, formerly known as Mountain View, Taylor Parker settled into the same routine as every woman sentenced to die in Texas. Wake up at dawn, count, breakfast through a metal slot. An hour alone in a fenced recreation cage, then silence again. No physical contact, no freedom, just 4 gray walls and a sentence that would follow her until the end. Outside, the world moved on. But the case never truly faded. Every few months, news outlets revisited her story. Documentaries replayed her courtroom outbursts, her fake pregnancy photos, and the lies that led to murder. For many, she became a symbol, not just of cruelty but of the darkness that hides behind a smiling face. And yet, for others, she was a mystery. Even now, behind those prison gates, she continued to write letters insisting she wasn't a monster, claiming that what happened that morning was not how it's being told. Her words carried no apology, no acceptance, only confusion and denial. Inmates who passed her during the rare moments outside their cells said she rarely spoke, but when she did, her voice was calm, almost childlike. One guard later told a reporter, "She acts like she's living in a dream that hasn't ended." Meanwhile, the family of Reagan Simmons Hancock still carried the weight of her absence every single day. Her mother often visited the grave where Reagan and baby Braxlin rest side by side. 2 lives, 1 stolen before it even began. She once said, "I still can't understand how someone could do this. Every breath I take reminds me of what we lost." For them, the sentence wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition, that the world would never forget the name Reagan, or the little girl who never got a chance to take her first breath. And so, Taylor Parker waits. Each appeal that's filed is another reminder that her story isn't finished yet. The date of her execution hasn't been set, but the clock is still ticking. When that day finally comes, the same questions will echo through Texas once again. What does a woman think about in those final hours? Does she finally see the faces of the people she destroyed? Or does she still believe in the fantasy she built with her lies? No one knows. But one thing is certain. The story of Taylor Renee Parker will forever stand among the darkest crimes in Texas history. A story of deception, obsession, and a single act that stole not 1 life, but 2. As the lights dim across death row each night, her name still lingers in the silence. A reminder of how far someone will go to live a lie, and how even the most innocent smile can hide the deepest kind of evil. Do you think Taylor Parker truly feels any remorse? Or is she still living inside her lies? Tell me what you believe in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true Final Hour stories.